Hello everyone, welcome to Fayette Regional Health Talk. I'm Doug Fischesser.
And I'm Charity Moore. Thank you for joining us. Health Talk is made possible by TV3 and Fayette Regional Health System, so viewers in the Whitewater Valley can get a closer look each month at specific health and wellness topics that affect each of us every day. We will feature live interviews, on-scene reports, live demonstrations, and much more.
That's right, Charity. Health Talk will also be your source for up-to-date health news and events that are important to Connersville, Fayette County, and the entire Whitewater Valley. Leading this edition of Health Talk News is the announcement by Fayette Regional Health System that they will rename the Whitewater Valley Care Pavilion. It will now be known as the Fayette Regional Care Pavilion. The new name is a continuing effort to brand all Fayette Regional Health System service facilities under one common name and make them more recognizable to the community. The behavioral health services within the facility will remain the same.
Well, in addition to the name change, Fayette Regional announced that their new Geri Psych Services wing at Fayette Regional Care Pavilion will open in October. We will have a special guest later in the show to tell us more about this behavioral health service for seniors. In other news, Dr. Amy Wynn has come back home to join Dr. John Landry at Fayette Regional's Healthy Women OBGYN. Dr. Wynn is now Connersville's only female OBGYN. She's a 2001 graduate of Connersville High School. She's received her bachelor's degree from Indiana University, and she graduated from Nova Southeastern Medical School in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We are pleased to welcome Dr. Wynn home. For more information about Dr. John Landry and Dr. Amy Wynn, call 825-0538.
Fayette Regional Health System is proud to sponsor and take part in several upcoming events in the area. Franklin County Family Health Fair, Saturday, September 21st from 8:30 a.m. to 11. The event is co-sponsored by United Way and Staying Alive of Franklin County. Fayette Regional Varicose Vein Seminar, Thursday, September 26th, starting at noon with a complimentary lunch, followed by a brief presentation and free consultations with Dr. Dennis Kneffler. You must RSVP to reserve your seat. October events include Celebrate Women, Thursday, October 3rd from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Laurel, Indiana Library. There are 2 breast cancer awareness pink pajama parties in our area this October. Pretty in Pink Pajama Party, Saturday, October 12th from 6 to 10 p.m. at the Miller Building in Roberts Park, and the Pink Pajama Party, Saturday, October 19th from 7 to 11 p.m. at the Schilling Center in Brookville. Fayette Regional will also host a variety of other Pink Out activities to raise funds for cancer awareness and research.
And finally, the public is invited to the welcome reception to honor Dr. John Landry and Dr. Amy Wynn and the staff at the Healthy Women OBGYN on Wednesday, October 16th from noon until 1 in the Fayette Regional Hospital atrium. And when we return, our guest will be in the studio to tell us a bit more about the excellent rehab options at Fayette Regional.
Fayette Regional is your community hospital, serving the local area for 100 years. Founded in 1913, Fayette Regional has been providing great health care to the Whitewater Valley for a century and giving back to the community with outreach, support, and donations, as well as employing over 600 people in the local area. Fayette Regional, your community hospital.
Welcome back. Fayette Regional recently celebrated National Rehabilitation Awareness Week. This week is set aside to applaud the efforts of rehabilitation professionals and focuses the nation's attention on the powers and possibilities of rehab. Joining us today is Anita James, team leader for the Acute Rehab Center at Fayette Regional. Welcome to Health Talk, Anita.
Thank you.
Anita, it says here on your bio sheet that you've been at Fayette Regional for over 16 years and that you're a registered nurse and you're certified in gerontology.
That's correct.
You're certified in gerontology. Can you explain to us what gerontology means?
I sure can. Gerontology is the study of aging. It studies the different types of issues that the population, as we grow older, what issues we have as far as our physical issues, our medical issues, psychological issues, and even where we live at. We look at all different types of things that we can do as a community to help those patients as they become older and have to deal with all those changes they have in their lives.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about what kind of patients you typically see at the rehab center?
I can. We have a 16-bed unit, and a lot of the patients we see are neurological. They have anything from a traumatic brain injury to a stroke, Parkinson's, those type of neurological deficits. We also see a good amount of patients with orthopedic, which means they may have a fractured hip, they might have a total hip replacement, they may have both of their knees replaced. Those are your typical ones you see in the acute inpatient rehab. We also see a fair amount of patients that we call debility. And that means they've been in the hospital for an extended period of time where they may have had open heart surgery, they may have had multiple issues with medical reasons, and they have just lost their ability to do what they were doing prior to those incidences. And what we do is we get them back up on their feet with some physical occupational therapy and get them back to what they were prior to those debilitating issues.
Charity mentioned the acute rehab center. Could you tell us what acute means?
Acute is in the word of, you think about somebody that's a diabetic, that's usually considered a chronic illness. Something that's been going on for a long time, it's not sudden onset. Acute means, let's say I was driving to town yesterday and all of a sudden I had a massive stroke. I was able to drive yesterday, I was able to walk, talk, take care of myself, but because of that stroke I'm now not able to do that. And that's something acute, not chronic.
Dr. Logan is the medical director for the ARC. I have a little story about Dr. Logan I think that a few people know around the hospital. He is my neighbor, and he moved in about a month after he arrived in Connersville. He moved in just off the 3rd tee at the Willowbrook Country Club, and one of our Wednesday night league nights, one of our employees from the Fayette Regional Health Systems actually hit a wayward ball through his dining room window and ended up in his living room along with where he was sitting. So that story got spread about not too long after he started. Can you tell us a little bit more about his role?
Well, I have to tell you, he told me all about that when I was hired. He said, you know, that was a very good welcome. They were saying, hello, Dr. Logan. He's a transplanted Hoosier. He's been in Terre Haute for about 20 years. He's also been at the hospital for about 5 or 6 years in our acute rehab. He takes care of all of our patients as the medical director at the unit. He also has an office on the first floor of the hospital where he treats neurological patients, whether again it might be a stroke patient, it might be a Parkinson's patient, dementia, Alzheimer's patients, and he does all that on the first floor of the hospital here at the hospital.
What services are provided at the Fayette Regional Acute Rehab Center?
We provide a multitude of services. We have physical therapy, we have occupational therapy, speech therapy, and then of course all the ancillary services, which would be our social service department, the nursing department, our lab, x-ray. If a patient has a need with cardiology, we have cardiology services there, oncology services, any of those types of services, we have that availability at our hospital within our department. They can get to those services.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about maybe the qualifications a patient must meet in order to become admitted to the ARC?
There's several things that they have to be able to do. The first one is usually the scary one for the patient. When I go in to assess the patient, I will let them know that one of the requirements by CMS, which is Medicare, and that's where most people go by is Medicare guidelines, they have to tolerate 3 hours of therapy. And I always have to laugh and tell them, you know, I can't tolerate 3 hours of therapy at once, and I don't expect you to either. But within time, during that first part of their day and into the early evening, they have to have 3 hours of therapy. The other part is they have to be 18 years of age and older, and they also have to have at least 2 different types of therapy services, whether it be PT and OT, PT and speech, but they have to have 2 of those. And they also have to have a rehab potential. Unfortunately, there are the unfortunate patients that may have a very debilitating issue with their medical condition that they're not able to be rehabbed. In other words, there's no rehab potential. So those patients would not be eligible. So they do have to have a rehab potential. And again, it doesn't mean they have to go from being not able to do anything to being totally independent, but they have to have some sort of rehab potential to get them back to where they were.
Okay. What are some of the features at Fayette Regional's Acute Rehab Center that maybe sets us apart from some of the other rehab centers in our area?
We're very fortunate that we have what we call an ILS, which is an independent living suite. We take that room and we make it into a similarity to an apartment or a small home. We have a living room, we have a complete bedroom like as if they were at home. We have a kitchen table, we have a refrigerator, microwave, and so on. And the reason why we do that is we want that transition of care when they go home to stimulate everything that they have to do to go home. In other words, especially if they live at home, we have to make sure that if they come in on day one and we know they have to be able to get in and out of their bed or they have to get in and out of a couch, how can we make that happen? And sometimes we have to make modifications to their homes by the family by saying, you know, how low is your couch at home? Well, they may have to go and do a home eval with that patient and the therapy staff to be able to say, well, maybe we need to move the chairs around because it looks like she's not going to be able to get in and out of this type of chair, but she does well with this one. So we can do those recommendations for modifications.
So that makes a real smooth transition from hospital to the home.
Yes, it does.
Okay, can you explain some of the other features like the kitchen are used?
Okay. We also have a kitchen in our rehab gym. And it has all the regular things you would see in a regular standard kitchen. It has a dishwasher, garbage disposal, stove, refrigerator, and oven, and a microwave. And some of those things we do are, we set up, maybe today we want them to make a small meal. We want to make sure that they know, can they reach into the cabinet? You know, it's something very simple. I want to make pancakes today. Can I get into the cabinet to get the pancake flour? Well, I can't reach it. It's always on the top shelf. Well, that's where we have to, again, make modifications to say, put things within their reaches instead of having to reach up high because they can't do that anymore. We also think about a microwave. You know, if they've had a stroke and they have some memory impairment, do they remember not to put the fork in the microwave? Something very simple. But again, if they've had an issue with a deficit from that stroke, we have to figure out how can we work around that to make it safe. And sometimes we have to look at things and say maybe it's not safe for them to use the microwave anymore, and they have something brought into them to either buy Meals on Wheels, something like that, to help them out. The other thing is, of course, we have a refrigerator, and you want to make sure that the patient knows that you don't put something in the refrigerator today and 2 weeks from now think that that food is still okay. You know, we all know we have something stuck in the back of our refrigerator that, you know, we're not sure what it is when we get the bowl out. But they have to have that memory and mentality to know, I can't eat that. One thing I didn't bring up when we were on the independent living suite, another memory thing we do is, let's say the patient takes 12 medications a day. And we set them up with a pill container box where we set all the medications up for them, and we give them a medication sheet, and we expect that patient to call the nurse's station at 9 o'clock when that medication's due and say, it's time for my medications. And if they don't call, then that nurse would go down and say, Mrs. Smith, did you take your medicine this morning? And that's when the patient would say, oh, I forgot. So again, we work on things to say, okay, we're going to take them now, but now what time is your next medication? And they'll look at their sheet and say, it's 1. And then we'll remind them, remember to call at 1 o'clock. Again, we go through that several times and the patient's still not able to do that. Then we would come up with another plan with that family to say, we're not sure she's going to remember to take her medications. How can we set this up for home that either someone can do it for her or somebody stops by at that time? How can we make that happen?
Okay. Do you have a washer and dryer available as well?
We sure do. Again, another issue with patients. I always tell them I'd love to say I have somebody to do my laundry, but I don't. They have to do it just like we do. So we look to see, can they reach down in the washer? Can they reach up in the dryer if it's a stackable? You know, do they know not to put it on for 2 hours? You know, the things safety-wise. Don't put plastic in the dryer. You know, all the things that we're looking at, again, for safety, we want to make sure of that when we're doing the realization that can they do their laundry? And again, if they can't, trying to figure out how can we set it up so when they go home that they can.
I see. Anita, can you maybe explain to us some of the differences between an actual skilled nursing facility and the acute rehab unit?
I can. We have, one of the biggest things is the acute phase. Again, skilled nursing is sometimes more for the long-term patient. In acute rehab, we have the intensity of service. Intensity, again, as we've talked to before, it's the 3 hours of therapy a day. Typically, that's where it makes it just a little different than the skilled nursing facility. Again, those patients in the acute phase, the quicker you can get them up and moving, the better chances they have for a better recovery. So again, it's the intensity of service. We have the multidisciplinary. We have services on our unit to where they could have lab work, the physician sees them every day, and that sort of thing. That makes us a little different than the skilled nursing facility.
Okay. Well, I know that we have aquatic therapy at Fayette Regional. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. A lot of people still don't know that we have a pool on our 3rd floor of the hospital in our outpatient gym area. It is a heated pool, and a lot of our patients that have issues with, if they've not had something surgical, but yet they have trouble bearing weight on their legs or their arms, they can do therapy a lot less painful in the aquatic pool. One, it's warm, it warms the joints up, so they are actually able to perform a little better. We also have one of our therapists. She is going to tell us a little bit more about our pool, and her name's Sarah Rush.
Okay.
We treat a variety of patients here at Fayette Regional Health System, ranging from total hip, total knee, pediatric patients, stroke patients, general debility patients. You can do a lot of things in the pool, like unweigh painful joints, decrease swelling, and basic exercising, get the patients moving and work on gait training, walking, and helps with balance. The pool is open to the public Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 to 8 and 12 to 1, and the cost is only $5.
Okay, Anita, are there any special qualifications for the staff and the ARC itself?
Yes, there is. All of our documentation has to be according to what we call the FIM documentation. Again, we use a lot of letters. That stands for Functional Independent Measurement. And what that is a documentation tool that we use to make sure that we're all documenting with the same background. In other words, I'm going to look at the definition of what one thing means, and someone else would be looking at it the same way. For example, we have a patient come in and they're not able to walk at all. And it takes 2 patients or 2 staff members to actually move them to a chair. That means they are a level of 1, which means it takes 2 people to move them. All the way up to, if they were absolutely able to do everything all by themselves to go from point A to point B, they would be a level 7. So 0 means it did not happen, and then it goes up with the independence level as the number gets larger. We also have to have all of our staff certified to do that type of documentation, and we have to go online, do the research, do the education, and then we take a state test. And we have to certify our facility with a minimum of 85% of our staff FIM certified every 2 years. And we just completed that last month, and we're at 94% of our staff. Some of our other things we do with FIM documentation is we set goals for those patients. When they come in, and let's say they're a level 2 in something, our goal may be that we want them to be a level 6 when they go home, which might mean they just need a device. They might need a walker, they might need a reacher to be able to reach down and pick something off the floor. Because again, maybe their balance is still not great, so we don't want them doing some of those things that might be a safety thing. We actually have a couple things with some of the scores with walking. Again, if I walk without any device, I'm a 7. But maybe I have some issues with safety. I can walk just fine, but maybe I have to be reminded a few times, now don't forget, pick your feet up, or don't step on the cord, step across the cord, and things like that. That would put me down to a 6 level because I have to be reminded of some things. I can walk fine, but I have to have either safety reminders or just cues to do something in particular.
Okay, I understand that the ARC unit just recently received a very prestigious award. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We did. This is our 5th time winning the award. Over 800 facilities in the nation are eligible to win this award. And during that time, we have all the documentation that we send into the database. They take all that information and come up with what our scores are. And what that means is, let's say we have a patient again come in with that score of a level 2, and we set them a goal of a level 6. How many times did our patients reach those goals? And all that data goes into that database and comes out with a score. Some of the other things we do, they rate, is if you go to the nursing home maybe after you're discharged from us. Maybe that wasn't our goal to begin with, but maybe they did not progress as well as they should have or could have. So that will be a score that we would get. The other things they look at are how many patients went back to the medical side. Let's say they came in with debility and they were an open heart patient, and maybe they had a heart issue and had to go back to the medical hospital. They also rank that score as well. So they take all those scores together, and that's where they come up with a facility score. And you can score from 0 to 100%. And this year, proudly enough to say again, we were in the 96th percentile. And that's thanks to all the people that work on our unit. It's not just one person, it's a team of people, from the medical director to the therapist to the nursing assistant to the dietitian to the social worker. It can't happen without all those people making that happen.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's really a very good success story there. Having lots of experience with patient financial services, what insurances do you typically accept for the ARC? Is it Medicare only, or?
No, it's not Medicare only. Medicare is probably our primary. That's the one we probably see the most of. We have all sorts of insurances. It depends on what their insurance policy says. If I have Blue Cross and they don't cover inpatient acute rehab, then that would be something that we wouldn't be able to change. But sometimes it's just a matter of getting us on a list, or actually just saying, can you get that added to one of your policies? Or maybe they have to get an extra policy for that. But for that patient, it has to be on their policy, as well as it has to be within network and those sorts of things. But it's just a matter of us calling for that family and saying, we have a patient that needs to come to our unit. Is this type of a unit covered for your family member?
If I was a person that could benefit greatly from the services that you do provide at ARC, how would I go about becoming that patient?
If you were a patient in our hospital, what would happen is therapy, if they've already evaluated that patient, they may make a recommendation to the physician or the family that, you know, she really needs some intense rehab. Or if the physician during his assessment says, oh, they need some acute rehab, not just a little bit of therapy here and there, they need an intensity of service. So they would write that referral for the acute rehab. If they were at home, a same scenario, maybe the home health came in and realized this patient really needs a lot more, they can make that referral from home and call their family doctor, and they call and give us that referral. If they were in another city from a hospital, same thing, that social worker would call us and fax us the information. We bring all that information back together with the whole team. We have therapy look at everything. We have the nursing department look at it, dietary, the medical director, and we sit down as a team and decide, is this patient appropriate for inpatient acute rehab? We have sometimes patients that want to come, but they truly cannot tolerate that type of intensity. If they've been in a wheelchair for 10 years, we're not going to miraculously make them well in one day. But if they've debilitated some to where we need to get them back to going from bed to chair and such, then we can do that possibly with that type of patient.
Anita, one last thing before we say goodbye. Can you tell us a little bit about the patient discharge process?
Well, Doug, the discharge process, we start on day 1 of admission. We want our patients to go home with all the services they need, and go home with a smooth transition. With that, I mean, on day one, if we know that this patient has, for example, 25 steps to get in their home, and they've had a new broken hip, first of all, we have to look, can they bear weight on that hip? Some of the patients, according to their surgery, they cannot have weight bearing on that particular hip. So we have to think about how are they going to go from the front door inside their house. And then we meet with the family and we come up with maybe they have a side door entrance if they only have 2 steps to get in the house, especially to the area where they're going to be living at. So we meet with the family, come up with a plan of how they're going to get back into their home once they're done with rehab. Sometimes we have to talk with them right up front that maybe there's no other entrance to the house, so maybe we need to get a ramp built. So we want to talk with that family right off the bat, because you can't wait till the day before discharge and say, hey, can you build us a 20-foot ramp? That's difficult, even if you tell them on day one. Some of the other things we do, say the patient has a couple of other doctors in Indianapolis, they have a heart doctor, they have an orthopedic surgeon here, so we got to make all of those appointments for them so that on day of discharge, they have everything ready. They don't have to wait till they get home and say, oh, I have to make an appointment with the doctor. No, we've already done that for you. The other troublesome thing to patients sometimes are, where do I get my medicine? How do I get all my prescriptions filled? You know, again, on the way home, they don't need to worry about that kind of thing. They just need to drop by and pick them up. So we take care of either writing the prescriptions by the doctor, he calls them in, whatever needs to happen to make sure they have all their medications. Because we want that transition when they go home. That's kind of the last thing they do. They want to tell everybody goodbye, get their hugs and kisses in, and they're ready to go home. And so we want to make sure that's as smooth as possible on that last day.
So that definitely takes off a lot of the burden that the family members are going to have to deal with.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. Well, Anita, thank you so much for joining us today, and we are fortunate to have such outstanding rehabilitation services right here in our own community.
Thanks again, Anita. Keep up the good work on the 3rd floor. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Fayette Regional is proud to welcome Dr. Amy Wynn to our Healthy Women OBGYN staff of physicians. Joining Dr. John Landry, Amy will be providing outstanding OBGYN services to the women of Fayette County and the Whitewater Valley. Visit their offices at 1908 Park Road or give them a call at 825-0538 to set up an appointment. Great care is right here at Fayette Regional.
Welcome back. On October 1st, Fayette Regional will open its new geriatric behavioral health unit at the Fayette Regional Care Pavilion. Joining us now is Tammy Dowd. Tammy is the Business Development Director for the new service. She is here to tell us a little bit more about Geri Psych Services. Hey Tammy, thanks for stopping by.
Hi there. Hi Charity, Doug. Thank you for having me.
Tammy, let's start by telling us a little bit more about the new Geri Psych service.
Absolutely. We will be providing services for seniors age 65 and above who are experiencing the mental challenges that the aging process brings. Not everyone is equipped for this, this part of the life's journey. This can be a difficult time, not only for the senior, but for their family, for the caregivers as well. And fortunately for us, Fayette Regional realized that there's a need for this type of senior care in our community, and they've responded.
That is really interesting. What kind of candidates do we have for this treatment? Who are the candidates?
Sure. Seniors 65 and above that are in acute crisis, dealing with physical, emotional, mental, social issues, like I said, in acute crisis at that moment. These will be related to the aging process. So this could be someone suffering from the common issues of depression to the more complicated areas of dementia.
How are these patients actually referred for this service?
Okay. The referral process will be something like this. We'll get a call from the unit. This could be either from, say, a spouse, a daughter, family member, caregiver. say a staff member at one of the facilities, and they will call the unit. We'll ask for some information, first being what actually is going on with this patient. Give us a brief description of the patient's symptoms, what's going on, what is causing this acute behavior. We'll ask for their current medical status, their current medications. We'll ask for patient demographics, and if there's been any type of previous psychiatric treatment. There may not have been. It is not, it's not a requirement for admission. And then, of course, insurance information. Once we have received all this information, we'll contact Dr. Osmond, who is our medical director, the psychiatrist there at the Care Pavilion, and he will make sure that this patient's appropriate for our program. And our promise, our pledge to our caller is that we will have a response back to them within the hour.
Tammy, what's the average length of stay once the patient is admitted into the unit?
Of course, we're not open yet, but the anticipated length of stay is going to be from 7 to 10 days. Now, this is going to differ per person. It's going to be affected by what the admitting diagnosis is.